Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Peaceful Solutions certification, teacher certification class. Great to see everyone here again. Please be seated. Now, if you recall, in the last class we've been working on this, the making of a VIP in chapter 3. And I believe it was David that was up here last time and going over these things. Before we get started tonight, let's go ahead and go to page, LP3D, so we can refresh ourselves on the steps we're taking here. We're in step number 6, where it says, explain to students that violence is one influence that has a negative effect on their values and their ability to achieve a positive character. And then have students discuss the sections found on pages 64 and 65 in their handbooks entitled Violence is No Fun and Games and Lights, Camera, Action. Then take the quiz on page 66, which we'll be getting into tonight. Discuss how seeing repeated acts of violence can affect their ability to choose nonviolence mean to solve their problems. Ask students, what effect does violence have on our society and on them as individuals? And it tells you some of their answers will vary, but might include it influence us to take on their characteristics that we are continually seeing. Because remember, they see a lot of television, they see a lot of movies, they see a lot of YouTube videos and Netflix, things like this. And they see a lot of this kind of behavior on a continual basis, thereby accepting crime, pain, and suffering as normal behavior. Okay, so let's pick up now back on page 65 in your manual. If you don't have a manual, remember you can go to the Facebook page, Peaceful Solution Facebook page, and you can download the manual we're using tonight. They have it right there on the site. Okay, so we're going to be on page 65, but I do want to go over a few things that were covered last time just to refresh our memory of what we went over about influences, okay? And if you back up to page 62, it talks about, how some influences are very subtle. I like to think of that word subtle as subtle, because that word, it's pronounced, they pronounce it subtle, but actually it should be subtle. But the B is so subtle, you don't even know it's there, right? Well, I don't know who the fools are that made up the rules about grammar, but I will pronounce it subtle because sub means under. That means like a submarine or a subway system. It's underneath the water, underneath the ground. So these influences, what it means is they're underhanded. You don't even see them. You're not even aware of them. As a matter of fact, I got a definition here from Merriam-Webster of the word subtle. A very simple term here. It says hard to notice or see, not obvious. Number 2, clever and indirect, not showing your real purpose. And the third one says having or showing skill at recognizing and understanding things that are not obvious. But I want you to focus on that first one, hard to notice or see, not obvious. Remember, it's underhanded. It's very sneaky. You don't even know it's there. I can give you an example of a very subtle influence. And if you don't think these things actually work, advertisers use these things, these very subtle influences. They call them subliminal advertising because it does work. It's been proven to work. I'll give you a couple small examples here. This is see if I can. Okay. This is a Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC. I think you have to say KFC because of the NAFTA thing. But can't use Kentucky anymore, I guess. But it's called the 99-cent KFC snacker. Now, do you see anything obvious there other than some kind of hamburger or fish burger or whatever that is? Well, guess what? Right there is a dollar bill. in the lettuce. A $1 bill. See that? Now, why do they do that? I don't know, but it works. They know that the human mind, remember, on a subconscious level, catches these things. Okay? The conscious mind doesn't see it. You just see what you just saw there before I pointed it out to you. Another example of subliminal, you're not allowed to, cigarette makers are not allowed to advertise cigarette products on television. Haven't been for years. They had to stop doing it. They also used to have them on the race cars, what do they call that, NASCAR? They had, Marlboro and different companies had their cigarettes plastered on the cars of the race car drivers. Well, they had to stop doing that too. But they came up with another clever idea. What they did was they took their barcode from the cigarette pack and stuck it on the side of that car. You see that? That's the barcode from a Marlboro pack of Marlboro cigarettes, and they say when it's streaking by, the racer can really actually associate those colors and that barcode right there with a pack of Marlboro cigarettes. Well, they had to stop doing that too. Some people came down on them for that. They had to stop doing that as well because it was something that the human mind was actually catching on a subconscious level. So if you don't think these things are powerful, they really actually are. I could go on for days telling you some of the influences that are out there, subtle influences that we don't see. And we could go throughout our whole life, it says, and not even realizing that they're influencing us. Now, does that mean that it's not going to affect you just because you don't know? Because you don't know you're being influenced? Does that mean it doesn't affect you? Well, of course it does. Of course it affects you. Just because an infant doesn't know an electrical socket, if they stick something in it, could shock them and possibly kill them, does that keep them from getting killed or seriously harmed if they stick something in it? Yeah, just because, they have a saying out there that says, what you don't know won't hurt you. You ever heard that? That means that if you're standing in the middle of the highway and a truck's coming and you don't know it's coming and it hits you, you'll be fine. Right? That's what they try to make you think. But the truth is, it's what you don't know that's actually bringing a lot of harm. And that's why education, or that enlightenment, that this bringing these things out to the forefront, this education is so important. Talks about, remember David talked about the foods that you eat have an influence over the way you think, feel, and behave. Improper foods, I think he talked a little bit about that. He also talked about colors, how they influence us, and how these marketers, remember, the ones that make these advertisements and that sell products, they know all the tricks, okay, to get us to buy something. Even product placers in stores, they call it product placement, where when you go into a store, they have everything in a grocery store in a specific location, not because it's convenient to stick it right there because it looks nice right there or anything. No, these marketers, these product placement companies, they hire them to come in and show them where to place products where you can sell them the best. That's why they always have the candy and the magazines at the checkout line where the children are all standing around, waiting for you to pay so they can all grab candy bars and little gadgets off the shelf and try to stick it in the cart while you're standing there, right? Or they put certain things at eye level in the aisle where a little child's sitting in the basket in the shopping cart where they can reach out and grab it and possibly stick it in the basket without mom knowing. And mom ends up paying for something she didn't want. But these are just little subtle things that they use. And these things influence us. Now on page 63, he talked about some of the influences that we know, and he talked about pets, how pets influence us, and they can have a calming effect, and they can make us smile and laugh, because they do a lot of funny things. Animals are, very funny at times. And then he left off, his last thing he talked about was on page 64 about violence and how it's not fun and games, okay? As a matter of fact, he talked about the video game industry, how, you know, the bottom line, if you look at the third paragraph here, video games, it says, are also another source of influence that have been known to have negative influence on values and character. Video games are here's the bottom line, a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. That means somebody's getting very, very, very rich, okay? But I want you to understand something else about the video games, especially these very violent, graphic war games and things that they sell. We've had seminars on these things recently. These video games are so realistic because the video game makers work with the military planners to make these video games, okay? They showed all the right hand, you know, the military people give them all this knowledge of all the right hand, eye coordination, movements, things about shooting, the stance of a soldier, etc. They show them all the moves that a soldier makes, and they incorporate these things into their video games, okay? They have it's kind of like the Hollywood and the Pentagon, you know. If you ever have an opportunity, I would encourage you to watch. It's a not a documentary, but it was I think Al Jazeera had a program. It was called Empire. It was like a weekly news program, and they had a series, or they had I think it was a series, a couple of shows about the relationship between Hollywood and the Pentagon, and how movie producers, you know, when they want to make a really great war movie, okay, you know, like Black Hawk Down or Tora, or, you know, some of these old military movies. One of them they mentioned in there was that Tom Cruise movie. What was that? Top Gun, right? See, I've pretty much forgot a lot of these. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. But yeah, Top Gun. They have a relationship. Hollywood, you know, did you know that Hollywood producers actually have offices in the Pentagon? In fact, when you look at any kind of war movie, anything that has to do with war or you know, Vietnam War or any kind of war, there's a guy, you'll always see his name in the credits of the movie. His name is Phil Strube. Phil Strube is the guy at the Pentagon that looks at the movie script. Let's say that a Hollywood movie maker wants to make a movie like Black Hawk Down. And they want real Black Hawk helicopters because they want something that looks realistic when they make a movie, right? They don't want computer graphic type stuff. They want to use the real deal. So the Pentagon will allow them to use their equipment. All they have to do is pay for the gas under one condition. They have to allow Phil Strube to look at the script and take out anything that makes the military look bad. Okay? They have to approve of the script. So certain movies don't get to use the equipment because certain movies show the military, the actions of soldiers that are out in the battlefield, the real actions that go on, okay, in war. War is an ugly thing, okay? It's not pretty. But they try to glorify war and make it look clean by scrubbing out things out of that script that make the military look less than heroic, okay? So some movie makers stick to their plan, and they say, you know what? I'm not going to let you change the script. I'm going to go ahead and use computer graphic stuff or whatever, but you're not going to change my movie script. Some of them stick by that. Others go ahead and let them do whatever they want with the script and change. And the problem with that is you're not seeing real history. What you're seeing is a dumbed down version of what really took place in that war. And so the public is getting that propaganda instead of the truth about what takes place in war. Okay, so just know there's with the video games and the movies, movie makers, there's a relationship between the war planners and the movie makers and video game makers, okay, to make it realistic and to increase enrollment in the military, okay? We'll learn more about that too as we go along in this Peaceful Solution program. So let's pick up in page 65. That's where I'm going to start. That's my portion this evening. And it says at the top, negative influences become part of your subconscious mind, and even though you are not aware of them, they can cause you to think and act in a specific way. So even though you're not consciously aware of them, remember, it's still affecting you regardless. Okay, you're still going to be affected by it, and you could go your whole life without even knowing you're being affected. That there's that thing affecting your subconscious. Okay, now I remember, I think it might have been Chris, but it might have even been David, that talked about the mind and how powerful the mind actually is and how important it is. It's like the most important tool that you have, okay? I marvel sometimes. I used to tell students that, you know how mechanics are with their tools? Don't mess with my tools, because mechanics rely on their tools. They got to have their tools to do the job. So if they go to their toolbox and something's missing out of that toolbox because you didn't put it back, they're going to be highly upset because they could lose, possibly hours of work because they don't have the tool that they have to have in their toolbox because someone didn't replace it or put it back. But that same mechanic will go home at night and he'll put out a line of cocaine on the table and destroy the very tool that helps him pick up a tool and use it. Okay? So people are very, it's kind of like, don't scratch my car. You scratch my car, I'm gonna hurt you really bad. It's like they put a lot of value on inanimate objects. But when it comes to people, or even themselves, they don't show that same value. Okay? And not that you should be hurting anybody, if they scratch your car or something like that. You shouldn't be hurting anyone, right? The Peaceful Solution is all about being harmless, not bringing harm to anybody. So it says, lights, camera, and action. Action, suspense, and violence are the stuff great, air quotes, movies are made of, right? Millions of moviegoers seem to agree. I think the last one I saw on the news, I don't know if it was Avengers or one of these Marvel Comics movies that made close to $1 billion in just a few weeks worldwide. I think it was a couple weeks. Very graphic, very violent, very animated. But it made, this is like unheard of, that kind of money. A movie making that kind of money. But this is what draws people to the movies. And it says, in fact, the more action and violence the movie has, the more it is hyped up and promoted as a great flick. Well, that word flick, or Netflix, you've heard of Netflix, right? Well, they call movies flicks. You know why they call them flicks? Back in the early days of movies, like the Charlie Chaplin movies, they had what they call frames per second in film. Frames per second in film back then were only about 16 frames per second. So the movies would flick. They would make a flickering effect, like flicker all the time, like a little flashing. So they called them flicks. Okay, they called flicker shows or flicks. Now, the frame rate, or how many frames you see per second of film, is like 24 to 30. That's about the norm. Okay. And that's also how they can get away with the subliminal advertising that we talked about before. They can add a 25th frame to a 24 frame per second, and your mind won't even know it's there. They can also put things, if you have 24, think of it like this. You ever seen one of those little books, those little flip books where you just flip through it and there's a little character in there that makes it look like the character's moving? It's just a bunch of pictures, right? And you flick the book and it shows, a little character moving or something. It's the same thing with film. All it is a bunch of still pictures, and there's like 24 or 30 pictures per second. So they can stick something in one of those pictures, and your mind won't even pick, your subconscious mind will pick it up, but your conscious mind won't see anything. Okay? They can stick in there, drink Coca-Cola or eat popcorn or kill your mother or whatever they want to put. Okay? And they have been caught doing that too. Okay? Subliminal advertising, you know, it's outlawed. It's actually been outlawed. Now, do you think there's some kind of subliminal movie police going around checking everything to make sure there's no subliminal messages in the entertainment that you're watching? No, there's not. Sometimes they get caught, but you know, I don't even know if they get fined for doing it. I'm not sure. I haven't studied up on that. Now it says, did you ever see a movie and when it was all over, the only thing you could recall was the fight scene? Children? Adults? It affects adults the same way. I remember when I used to go to movies back in the early 90s, late 80s. The last movie I think I ever saw was in 90, I want to say it was 96, at a movie house. But I remember when I used to go to the movies, after any movie that I saw, if it was like a Saturday Night Fever or Grease or something like that, if you went out in the parking lot afterwards, there's people out there dancing, acting like they could dance. Or if you watched a Bruce Lee movie or some kind of, you know, karate, martial arts type film, people were out in the parking lot karate chopping each other or drop kicking each other, you know, pretending, you know, they could do the same moves. These were adults, not just children. Okay? So I wasn't just talking to the children. But it seems like when we watch these movies with the, you know, the only thing they remember is the violent parts, like the very negative stuff. It says, one of the most recent studies concluded that in an average 2.5-hour action movie, there's over 70 acts of violence. Violence that includes everything the peaceful solution actually teaches against. Assault with a deadly weapon, armed robbery, rape, murder, and homicides are all on the big screen for your entertainment. Now that murder and homicide, you know, some people think it's the same thing, and actually it's not. Homicide is just when a human being gets killed, okay, in some way. Where murder, you actually have to kill someone with hatred and forethought, like malice, hatred in your heart, purposely planned out, you know, wanting to hurt this person. So there's a difference between them. That's why there's murder and homicide in a different spot there. Now it says the heroes and the heroines. That's a female hero, not to be confused with heroin, the drug. Although it probably has the same effect. Remember, drugs are an influence, right? Just like these heroines, these female heroes, like who are they? Who they call them? Charlie's Angels. You know, they could go around roundhousing men, you know, kicking them, and you know, they had all the right moves. That's what they call it. They have the right moves. Right moves? Doesn't the word right mean in the peaceful solution doesn't bring harm to yourself or someone else? So even the word right is not being used properly there, is it? So it says the heroes and the heroines always have the right moves and know how to nail the bad guys. They always know how in Hollywood. Hooray for Hollywood, right? They always know how to beat up the bad guys. It reminds me of a peaceful solution graphic I saw one time with some big old guy, you know, looked like the guy on the Ajax bottle, you know, the bald-headed guy with the big muscles. And there's some little boy sitting at the desk, and he says, "You don't want that desk, right, punk?" And the young boy pulls out a knife on the big boy. "Oh, yeah, I want that desk." Now, really, in real life, do you think that's going to work out real well? No, it's not going to work out well. It's better to give the guy the desk. I remember when I was in prison, a lot of these big old tough guys used to ask me, now, you don't want that breakfast, do you? You don't want that breakfast, right? You're not hungry, right? And I'm like, no, not really. Go right ahead. Because you know what? Now, if I was in Hollywood, how do you think I would have handled that? Oh, yeah, I probably would have got up, little, 5'5" midget, some 6'8" guy, and I probably would have jumped up and roundhoused him in the head, and I'd have told him, yeah, I'm eating my meal and yours. That's what they do in Hollywood, right? They make it look so easy to beat up the bad guy. It doesn't work in real life, okay? It doesn't work in real life. The best thing to do when somebody's, you're going to give up your life for a breakfast? Some of these guys are serious business. They will beat you up. They will knock your teeth out. They will do other things to you if you don't give them what they want. So the best thing to do is give them the breakfast. I'm talking about if you're in prison. There's different ways to handle things. And we'll get to that too. You don't always just give everyone what they want. But what I'm saying is, Hollywood makes everything look like, it's so easy to take on the bad guys or to win the fight. But fighting is not what the peaceful solution teaches. Okay? That's not going to bring peace, and that's only going to bring harm to yourself and somebody else. It says, there's also movies where the bad guy is the hero, and yet others where comedy's added to acts of aggression. Those are called like action comedies where, somebody's actually getting physically hurt, but they make it look funny. Like someone gets kicked in an area that's very sensitive, and the audience, they start laughing, or they put a laugh track in the TV show, where the audience is laughing to make you laugh. Did you know that those laugh tracks they used to put in the television shows in the old days, they used to, the audience was laughing, and you're kind of like, why are they laughing? That wasn't even funny, right? Well, they probably know it wasn't funny. That's why they had to put a laugh track in there to get you to laugh. Because they got to have something to influence you to laugh, to associate pain with laughter. Okay? Now, is that going to help you develop the positive character trait of compassion? Where you care about somebody else's suffering if you're laughing at their suffering? Or you're laughing at their pain? No, that's not going to help you at all. In fact, that's going to train you to go the other way. That's why you have to be careful not to allow these things into your mind in the first place, which we're going to talk about. Because once these things, these programs, why do you think they call them TV programs or video game programs? It's because they have to be downloaded into your brain, just like you download programs into a computer. And once they're downloaded, do you think you can erase it out of your brain? No, once you download it through your eyes, your ears, music, or we're going to talk about that too. Once you download it, it's there. You're stuck with it. That's why you have to be careful what you're watching in the first place. Don't put it there so it won't be there. We would not have these images in our mind right now if we hadn't have put them there in the first place. Now we've already put them there, so now we got to struggle with them because we're trying to practice a different way of life. We're trying to overcome these negative influences that we were bombarded with our whole life. We're trying to change our character to a positive character, and we have to struggle with those things in our mind because we put them there before we knew better. Okay? But if you're learning the peaceful solution and you're being educated on these things, you should be very careful ahead of time not to put these things in your mind so you won't have to struggle with them. Okay? Now it says, overall, the movie industry makes violence look glamorous. It offers violence as a way to solve problems. Sometimes it makes it seem as though violence is the only way to solve a problem. Okay? When the truth is, where the truth is, violence is never a way to solve your problems. Have you heard people say things like, well, you know, you can only push me so far. You know, I draw the line right here, you know. When somebody does this, well, that's where I draw the line. No, you can't have a line. In the peaceful solution, you can't have a line. There can never be someone pushing you too far where you retaliate. Because if we retaliate, if we strike back with words or fists, we lose. We lose. We lost. We lost at least that. We failed that test. Now, does that mean that we can't try again? No, of course we can try again, right? We can pick ourselves up, determine where we went wrong, what part of the peaceful solution did I not put into action in that situation? Determine where we went wrong, and then determine in our mind, set our mind in advance to not make that same choice again, and then try again. Okay? If you have I'm telling you right now, there's people that have, I never cared much for violence. I mean, personally, I wasn't a violent person in the way that, now I was violent with my mouth, but my fists and my hands and my feet or whatever, I didn't like hurting people, okay? But I hurt people in other ways, you know, physical or emotionally, or by stealing from them and doing things to hurt them in that way. But violence was never something. I never owned a gun, never wanted a gun, never wanted any kind of weapons around. I didn't care for that kind of stuff. But there's people that have grown up with these things. And we have to understand they were raised in an environment where they thought that they needed to have that for some reason, whatever the reason was. So we have to be willing to work with them. And it's not like they're going to just change overnight. If they have a violent disposition about them, and they like to attack, you know, like we're going to learn about anger, and you know, there's some people, you know, the way they deal with anger is they go into attack mode, okay, verbally and physically, and sometimes both. But we have to be willing to keep working with them and show them, you know, how to overcome that. And we can't expect that they're just going to change like that. It doesn't work that way, not all the time. Because remember, this was programmed into them through genetics. Remember we learned about heredity? Could be genetics. Could be the environment they were raised in, where they saw, you know, they lived in a tough neighborhood, or they lived in a home where there was a lot of violence going on, where yelling at each other was a normal thing. It wasn't, please, can you pass the salt? It was, hey, pass that salt. You know? Not every family is, you know, like you see behind me right here. Okay? It's not like that. We're dealing with reality in the peaceful solution. You got to deal with reality. You're dealing with a world that is filled with violence and hatred. You're dealing with a world that's, if you're watching what's going on even here in America right now, with the hatred, the level of hatred, even in the political parties. Do you realize people are talking about building camps for people that don't agree with them? This kind of rhetoric can only lead to a bad place. This kind of talk about retaliating and getting even with people can only lead to a very bad place. It has in the past, and it will now if it continues. We just need to be careful not to get caught up in it ourselves. In the peaceful solution, we can't take sides. What we have to do is be willing to bring both sides together and show them the solution to the problem. That violence, threatening, aggressive tone and words and things, that's not going to solve their problem. But we have to remember, you know, why is it that Hollywood is making these kind of movies? You want to know the simple answer? There hasn't been any Hollywood producers that have signed up for our program yet. Okay? But once they do, and once they get this information, they can keep making movies, and they can make some great movies that don't display the kind of things they're displaying now, and they would still be great movies. I've seen plenty of great movies that didn't have violence and the sexual content that you see now. They could make historical films and things and show things like that without going and degrading themselves with the violence and the sexual conduct and the things that they do. They wouldn't have to do that with the foul language. They wouldn't have to do that. Okay, so look at the caption at the bottom. It says, hey, I'm going to the movies. Do you want to come? Boy says, yeah, sure. What's showing? Well, let's see. There's a comedy with violence and romance, and there's a thriller with violence, and one is just plain violent. Notice he's reading the Yorktown Herald. Interesting. Wonder where Yorktown is. Okay, let's look at page 66. This is the activity for lights, camera, action. And this is where you find out, you let your students take this quiz to find out if they're influenced. Why don't we all do this together right now to find out if we're influenced, right? By the movies that we watch. Now, the first question says, I find movies containing violence in the form of kicking, punching, or the use of weapons exciting and fun to watch. And the answers are always, sometimes, or never. Now, before I took the piece, I'll give you the answers that I would have gave before I took the peaceful solution. I'll tell you what it was. Always. 2, if the bad guy gets hurt, I feel like he deserves it. Sometimes. Remember, this is pre-peaceful solution, not now. Because now it's always never, Number 3, I think it's fun to imitate some of the karate or kick moves I see in the movies. Sometimes. Sometimes I couldn't get my leg high enough, or, it was very difficult. Number 4, I think that if I could fight as well as the movie stars, I could solve a lot of my problems. I think back then, no. I didn't think that I could do that. I didn't like the violence. So it says, if you checked always and sometimes to any of the answers, this shows that you're influenced by the movies you watch. It means you're negatively influenced. The ideal answer for all the statements above is never. Okay? Now, realistically, you got to let your students answer that. You don't tell them, make sure that you tell them, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what the truth is. Tell me how you really feel. Tell me what you really think. Because remember, this is an evaluation. The way to solve the problem, the way to overcome it, is to first see what you need to work on. Okay, so now let's go into the music on page 67. Says, let's talk about music. Before we do that, go back to page 65 one more time. I want to talk about, I want to show you the definition of the word influence from a dictionary here. You can zoom in on that. Zoom out, actually. There we go. Okay, right there. Can you all see that okay? Yes. All right, this is the word influence, and I find this very interesting. It says, it's an astrological term, like the stars out there. It's an astrological term, and it means streaming ethereal power from the stars when in certain positions, acting upon character or destiny of men. It's from Old French influence, meaning emanation from the stars that acts upon one's character and destiny. Emanation, like something that's spread out, right? From the stars. Don't they call them movie stars? Now this is an astrological term, and it's talking about the stars in the heavens. But yet, the movie stars do the same thing. It says, emanation from the stars that acts upon one's character and destiny. It also means a flow of water, a flowing in, a flowing in, you know, like when you're watching something, it flows into you. Like if you're looking at it, you're watching that film or you're looking at that video game, it's flowing in through your eyes and ears. Like the music is flowing into your ears. You're downloading it into your brain. It also means to flow into, to stream in, to pour in. And it's from the root in, meaning in, and fluere, to flow. Very interesting. Streaming, you know, if they call it live streaming or the streaming and all that. Very interesting. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this music. Let me get this prop ready here. Okay. All right, so it says on page 67, let's talk about music. Can music influence your character? The answer is yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. Because there's a big exclamation point right there, and it's in capital letters, right? The music industry is a huge money-making business. There you go again, right? Money-making. Millions of dollars are spent every year on CDs and cassettes by teens like you and adults. From rhythm and blues to alternative, heavy metal, and rock, music is an important part of life and has been influencing people for thousands of years. Music has the ability to affect our emotions, and emotions affect the way we act. Before I go any further, I want you to turn back to LP, let's see. Let's give me a second. LP1A. LP1A, all the way back at the beginning of the book. Character, Introduction to the Unit, it says. And I want to look at the very bottom, not the very bottom, but it's about the third paragraph from the bottom. It says, if you were to poll what students want for their futures, none of them would say they want to be the victim of a school shooting or to contract HIV or a host of other STDs that cripple or kill. I haven't met any children that said that's what they wanted. On the contrary, they would say that they have hopes and dreams to pursue the career of their choice, to start families of their own, or to succeed in a healthy, joyous life. I've never met, anyone, or even parents, like when we teach them in the parenting program. Do you think there's parents out there that when their child's born into this world that they, and the doctor hands them that baby for the first time, that they get the baby and they're patting it on the back and they're like, oh, he's going to look so great in an orange jumpsuit one day. Do you think they think that? Of course not. Well, children they're not hoping for STDs and to be killed in a school shooting or crippled or maimed. They're not hoping for that either. It's our responsibility as educators, parents, and role models to give our children the skills and knowledge to resist negative influences and to attain a positive moral character in order to succeed in life. It's our responsibility as educators to do this. When you show children the things that we're learning in the Peaceful Solution about the subliminals and the subconscious and those things, they really take notice of that because they're like, wow, I never even knew that. Like, I didn't know they were doing that. It's very interesting to them. It's very interesting because they go, and it scares them actually. They're like, wow, that's scary that they're doing that. Because you know what? They don't know what's going on until you tell them. And I spend a lot of time in that chapter because it's very, very, very important for them to understand about influences and how powerful they are in shaping and molding someone's character. Very important. Movies, music, video games, all of it. Okay, so let's go back to page 67. It says, music has the ability to affect our emotions, and emotions affect the way we act. These music makers, They know how to pull your heartstrings, you know, with the sad music. I was thinking earlier today about a certain song. It was a 1985 number one, big hit. Yeah, I think it was called Secret Lovers. And it was a tearjerker. It really made you tear up when you heard it. But what they were singing about was two people that were married sleeping with each other. I'm sorry. Two people that were married having what they call an affair. That's what's wrong with that. And they, you know, they were secret lovers, you know. We can't let anyone know what we're doing, you know. But, you know, how can something so wrong feel so right? Because what we feel is oh so real. That was some of the lyrics. Yeah, what you feel. But remember what about feelings? Remember about feelings? Should we go by how we feel? Do you realize that kind of behavior is what destroys a family? We're talking about building families. We're talking about, you know, developing and creating and building families that are positive and moral. And then you got these kind of songs going on, you know, where it's telling you to go ahead and do this kind of stuff. And it puts it to a real pretty tune to where it sounds so wonderful. And, you know, you're tearing up and you're singing along with it. And you're not even thinking about the fact that they're talking about two people committing adultery. It's really amazing what they have the power to do. But those things don't even dawn on you until you start taking the Peaceful Solution program. Now, I wonder, you know, where they get these kind of ideas. Remember the stars. These things are emanating from the stars into their minds. The movie stars, the singers. It's emanating out there. Just today, I saw this on one of the news outlets. Frank Sinatra's daughter, Nancy, 80 years old now. She's 80 years old. Do you understand that? This is proof that just because you're old don't mean you're wise. She's saying, my advice to young people is don't get married so young and have an affair. In other words, be promiscuous. Sleep around on your mate. Remember, it's emanating from the stars. The ideas, the influences are coming out there. It says some music is used to help young children learn. I think David talked about that Mr. David Knighton when he was talking about children learning through ABCs. Words put to a melody or rhythm are easier to remember. This is why the ABCs are sung as well as many other children's songs. But you know what, folks? You want to know how subtle these things are, these children's songs? Wait till you take the Peaceful Solution parenting program, you'll find out. Well, I'll give you a preview. They sing to their children songs like Humpty Dumpty and London Bridge is Falling Down, not even realizing that Humpty Dumpty was actually a war cannon. They called it the Humpty Dumpty. It was a big old cannon that they had sitting up on a wall, guarding a city. And I guess the opposing army shot a cannonball at the wall, and the wall fell down, and Humpty Dumpty, you know, they couldn't put it together again, right? Now, why would you be singing that to your children? Remember, parents don't know. I didn't know this until I came to this program. That's actually a war song. You're singing about a war, things that were done in a war, like the London Bridge is falling. That was what occurred in World War I. But people sing about these things. Georgie, Porgy. That was King George, the womanizer that everyone sings about. Did you know that back in the old days, you couldn't criticize the king? If you criticize the king, off with your head. So they would come up with these little rhymes, like Georgie Porgy, pudding pie. They knew they were talking about King George, but they knew they couldn't come out and say King George because they would be dead. And we go our whole lives doing this stuff, and we don't even realize what's going on. No clue. That's why education is so important, okay? It's very important. And that's why you as educators, we as educators, we need to know this stuff. We need to know this stuff so we can let them know. We need to learn it ourselves so we can teach them. And believe me, we're going to be learning. You never stop learning, okay? As an educator, you never stop learning. It says, okay, sexually explicit and violent lyrics or lyrics promoting drug use are all sung or rapped to a great beat. That's why it really just kind of goes over their head, what's going on. It's like the music like really lifts them up and plays on their emotions and makes them feel positive and everything, or their idea of positive. They're not really paying attention to what they're really saying, a lot of times. Now, just because you can tap your feet, dance, or enjoy it with your friends doesn't change the power of the message that's being processed in your mind and stored in your subconscious mind. Stored in your subconscious mind. That means it's not going anywhere, folks. It's stored in there. Now, you might not remember the song, like on a daily basis, but once in a while it pops up. Like that stupid Kung Fu fighting song in the 70s. Everybody was Kung Fu. I couldn't stand that song, but you know what? It popped in my mind the other day. I'm like, really? I hated that song. But it does. It pops up. Just like word association. A guy came to me the other day and he goes, I go, how you doing? He goes, I'm staying alive. And I'm like, Word association. Somebody can just say a word and you're like, you think of a song or you think of a movie or you know what I'm saying? It pulls it up. Now, guess what? You think it would pull it up if you had never watched it or never heard it? No, because it wouldn't be there, right? Children, don't put it there. Listen to your parents. Listen to your teachers. Don't put it there. You won't have to struggle with it. So, ask yourself, how do you think listening to songs with explicit lyrics affects your character? You ever heard of an artist named Snoop Dogg? Snoop Dogg. He's a rapper. He's one of the original gangster rappers from the 90s. He's still in business. He's still around. But I got an article here that was posted on January 31st of 2021. And the title says, My Life Was Changed. Snoop Dogg says acquittal in murder trial prompted him to stop writing about death and violence. Listen to this. Snoop Dogg's ascendance to fame transpired in the era of gangster rap, in its brazen embrace of a life enmeshed in drugs, violence, and death. A willing proponent of the lifestyle, Snoop Dogg had his own success gangster persona that paid off for him in dividends, contributing to his commercially successful music career. In other words, he was making a lot of money, singing about death and violence and killing and stuff. He says, however, street life began to catch up with Snoop, and in 1996 he faced murder charges for his involvement in the shooting of a gang member in 1993. As recounted by the LA Times. It was this experience that changed Snoop's outlook on life, as he recently told Fat Man Scoop on Instagram Live. In the interview, the rap icon revealed what happened after the trial and the resulting acquittal, which forced him to reevaluate his direction in music. In other words, after this trial he had and his acquittal of murder charges, he's like, man, I got to stop doing this. But listen to what he says. On my second album, The Dogfather, when I beat my murder case, I redirected my pen to write life, because I felt like I had wrote death all the way up to that point, he said. When I started writing that Dog Father, that's the name of the album he made, I lost a lot of fans. I lost a lot of homies because they wanted me to keep gangsta after beating that murder case. They wanted me to glamorize and glorify it, but I was like, somebody's life was lost. My life was changed. This is a real situation, he added. I have actual remorse. I feel bad. This is coming from a man that made millions off singing about these kind of things. But guess what changed him? When it occurred to him, you know, it's like stealing's great, right? Until you get stole from. Oh, yeah, murder, watching murder and watching crimes being committed. Oh, that's great. Until it occurs to you. Seeing guys go to prison, watching prison movies like, what was that one? Something In and Out. Can't remember the name of it. Blood In, Blood Out. Watching that kind of stuff is cool until you're in there with these guys. But notice, he had a change of heart. He had a change. It changed him because he actually went through something that was like, he started to realize, I've been writing about death and destruction. And, you know, I've been using my pen for death. I need to start using it for another purpose. Now, I'm not saying that he had a full change of heart or anything, but I'm saying that he noticed, you know, the reality struck him when it occurred to him. Okay? We don't want it to have to go that far. We don't want people to have to experience things like Snoop Dogg experienced to get them on another track. They could get on another track with the Peaceful Solution Character Education program, right? That's what you're training for, men. That's what you're training for. Okay? Keep learning, keep educating yourself with the Peaceful Solution. Keep coming. I think the next class, my time is up tonight, but I think our next class is on the 3rd. Is it the 2nd or 3rd? See, today's 31st. 3rd. I believe it's Wednesday the 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Okay? So keep getting here. And it's been real enjoyable. Thank you, and you have a great evening.